This is the Become the Lion podcast. If you are aiming to become the top in your industry, not second, not above average, the top, then you have come to the right place. Become the Lion will provide you with weekly insights and motivation needed from our guests on how to escape the common herd that society lives in. If you're looking to change your life, then get ready. Welcome to Become the Lion.
Hi, this is Trevor and Nicholas from Become the Lion, and today on the show we have Tim Denning. And Tim, for our audience out there who might not know you, do you mind giving them some context on who you are and what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely, Trevor, and thanks for having me on the show. So my name is Tim Denning. I'm a writer on addictedtosuccess.com and also entrepreneur.com. But most people know me for my work on Addicted to Success, and it's basically one of the top motivational sites in the world. We've had over 110 million views, and we have over 2.2 million followers across social media. So our, I suppose, remit is to inspire the world through personal development and entrepreneurship. That's what we're all about.
And Tim, how did you get started as a writer?
How I got started was quite unusual. So I was actually just a fan of the website Addicted to Success, and I was just reading a lot of the content. It was really helping me in my life at that particular moment. And I just thought I'd love to meet the person who founded this site. And I actually found out that they were a fellow Australian just like me, and they lived in Perth. And the founder's actually, his name is Joel Brown. He now lives in the US, but originally he came from Perth. And he was advertising a blogging course in Perth for people that wanted to be up-and-coming bloggers. And whilst I had no intention of attending the course, I really wanted to meet him. And I'm the sort of person, if I want to meet someone, one way or another, I will find them. And I looked on the bottom of the website advertising the course, and I saw a mobile number. So I rang the mobile number, and that number went through to, I didn't know at the time, it went through to Joel's girlfriend. And I started quizzing her, not knowing her relationship to Joel, about how I would get in touch with him. And eventually that conversation led me to be able to contact him. And I actually booked some flights to Perth to go and see him. Now, what was unusual was that I had absolutely no appointment booked, no agenda, no nothing. I didn't even know why I was going to see him. I just felt like it was something that I had to do. So I got over to Perth, and on the morning that I was there, I rang him, and he didn't answer. And I'm thinking, I've spent a lot of time and money to come over here, and he's not around. And that's the risk that you take, right? And I tried him again in the afternoon. I finally got a hold of him, and I went and met him for coffee. And how I initially sort of got in contact with him was that he was trying to interview a particular founder of a tech company who was actually a client of mine. And so I offered to introduce him to that person so he could do an interview. And I went and met him for coffee, and he just said to me, look, have you ever thought about writing inspirational content? And I said, no, I love the content, but I don't really see myself as a writer. I was someone in high school that was actually pretty good at English, but it just was never really something that I wanted to do. And so, yeah, he asked me, and I was like, okay. And before I knew it, I was a blogger, and my whole sort of writing journey started from there.
What were some of the challenges that you had to overcome in your beginning stages of becoming a writer for Addicted to Success?
I think it was, the challenge for me was that I just felt like I wasn't enough. So I looked at, the writing that I'd done previously, and I'm not very good at spelling. I'm pretty hopeless at grammar. My work needs to be heavily edited, and that was a real barrier because I'm thinking, well, maybe I'm not really qualified to do this. But at the time, I was going through sort of a transformation in terms of personal development, and I decided to just do it anyway. And I thought it doesn't matter how bad the content is. I'm just going to do it regardless. I'm going to share my opinions. And I just did it. And what I found is it's like a muscle. Eventually, when you do it enough times, you get better and better and better at it. And one of the things that really helped me to get over the fear, which sounds like quite crazy, is that I had the real problem with I wasn't very good at grammar. I don't know when to use commas or semicolons. I've just got no idea. And so I downloaded a tool, I didn't download it, it's a website called Grammarly.com. And that really helped me to get the grammar to a point where I felt confident enough in myself to release a lot of this content. And, it started there, and now I'm lucky enough to have my own editor, and they can actually edit my content for me. So that fear has kind of disappeared. But it was a real struggle. And at the time I had quite a significant health challenge. So I had a narrow miss with cancer where I went in one day just for a checkup, and my doctor said to me, look, you're experiencing some stomach pains. That's all good. You don't need to worry about it. It's nothing. And he tried to get me to take some vitamins from a network marketing company. Now, I was very familiar with network marketing. I just thought it was wrong that my doctor was trying to give me pills from a network marketing company. So I was telling one of my friends, and she said to me, look, you really need to go and see my doctor. And for sort of 3 months, I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And eventually she convinced me, and I went and saw her doctor, and he eventually sent me to have some tests in hospital. And actually they found a lump the size of a golf ball in my gut. And so without me knowing, whilst I was asleep, they removed this lump, and they told me that it had been there for 2 years, and it was about 8 weeks away from turning cancerous. And so that particular challenge, whilst it may not seem like it's related to blogging, that kind of spurred a lot of the inspiration about what I write about, because I didn't realize that time is actually limited. None of us are here forever. And, if we're going to live our purpose and do what we want to do, we have to do it right now. We can't keep waiting. And so from that point on, when it comes to writing, I just get down and I just do it, because I know that maybe tomorrow I won't get that chance. So that's how I sort of overcame the challenge.
Your story is really admirable, and I had a thing just recently where I had run with cancer a few years ago. Then I had to go get testing the other day and they thought it came back, but luckily it didn't come back. And it really makes you think, like, what's going to be left when I'm gone, or when I'm dead? What am I going to leave behind? It almost seems like you use that to your advantage too, to really help you as a writer.
Absolutely. That's my drive, is that what happens if I'm not here tomorrow? Will anyone even remember my name? And it's not about me with this big ego. It's about what can I leave behind, because I have so much to offer, yet a lot of it's just untapped. And I think all of us are guilty of this, where we just leave our gifts, dormant for so long. And I just think that we need to take action now. We need to actually do something with our talent and show the world what we're capable of. And I'm a really big believer in that.
Do you think fear is what holds people back from living life to their fullest?
Absolutely. I think, we think about all these things that we're afraid of and what might happen if that bad thing happens. But a lot of the time, and this is a pretty popular acronym, fear is just false evidence appearing real. What we're actually fearing will never come to fruition. And even if it does, it will never happen to the degree that we feel that it will. So sometimes you just got to embrace that fear and use it as your motivation. For me, if I'm asked to do something and I'm not a little bit fearful, it means that I'm not stepping out of my comfort zone, and it's probably something that I shouldn't do. And so fear is an indicator for me that I'm on the right path, that this big thing that I'm trying to do, or this question that I want to ask somebody, is valuable, and I have to do it because there's fear. So use it to motivate you. Don't let it hold you back.
Tim, I wanted to ask you, as a writer, do you have a certain daily routine that you follow every day?
I absolutely do. So this is something that I've kind of fine-tuned over a long time, and I've read many books to kind of come up with this. But one thing that I'm really big on is waking up early. So I try and wake up at 4 a.m. every morning, which most people think is crazy. And the reason why I do that is I've found that that's when I'm most active and my brain is in the right place to be able to do what I need to do. And for everybody, that might be different. I know, there's people like Tim Ferriss, who I'm a big fan of, and he likes to write after 10 o'clock at night. That's just when he's in the zone. But I believe that when you wake up early, you kind of beat the rush, right? Everyone else is asleep. They don't know what you're doing, and you can really just get in that right headspace. So the morning and being up early is very important for me. The next step in my morning is that I have a cold-pressed green juice. So this is something that I learned at a Tony Robbins seminar many years ago. And basically, I have a liter of green juice that I make fresh every single day. And what that does is it's like having 10 coffees all at once. It gives me the energy and the health that I need to really, crush the day and do what I need to do. Later on in the morning, I then do 10 minutes of meditation. So I use an app called Calm. There's another one called Headspace. They're pretty well known. And I use that really just to get out of my head and clear out all the thoughts and I'm not good enough or whatever it might be that's in my head at that moment. And I find meditation is really good for that. I also make my bed in the morning, which might sound a little bit crazy, but I was always told that in the morning, you need to have like a little win. And for me, making the bed is like something that makes me feel good. And it also means that in my space, it's a clean environment. I can't write in a messy room. It's got to be nice and clean, and my headspace has to be clean at the same time. And so that's something that I'm really big on as well. I also believe another sort of habit that I have is to dress for success. So don't go out into the world, looking daggy and not clean and not shaven. Actually go out there and look like a winner, because then you'll feel like a winner. So I go to work and I wear a suit and I make sure I iron my shirt and my hair's all gelled, and try and actually look successful if you want to be successful. Another part to my morning is I'm really into trampolines. So I have it's actually called a Bellicon, Bellicon, and it's basically like a trampoline, but it has bungee cords rather than metal springs, so that you can actually bounce really high. And what that does is it gets your lymphatic system going in the morning, which really, I suppose, just releases a whole bunch of good energy and makes you feel really, really good. And I try and do about 10 minutes of that every morning. And I'll often do it in the afternoon as well. So if I'm doing a phone call in the afternoon, people that are fortunate enough to be on the phone with me will hear me breathing quite deeply, because I'm actually on the trampoline at the same time. And so I really feel that any sort of exercise is very important. For me, I just like the trampoline, but for other people, it might be doing weights or going for a run or whatever it might be. And then at nighttime, one of my sort of daily habits is that I like to read the Kindle before I go to bed. So I'll often have a book that I'm reading. At the moment, I'm actually reading Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And I just find that reading before bed helps to relax me, and it allows me to finish my day still getting inspiration and learning lessons that I can use in my writing and that I can teach other people in my own unique way. And the last habit that I do every day is that I have a cold shower. So not the entire shower, this is something I've just started doing, but if I'm having, say, a 10-minute shower, I'll try and do the last 30 seconds as cold. And the reason why I do that is, one, it really wakes you up in the morning, and two, it's really good to have your body go from hot to cold, in quite a variation of temperature. And, yeah, that's something that I've started doing, and if anyone hasn't tried it, I recommend doing it. One little hack, though, that is quite important is that if you just try and go from boiling hot to freezing cold, it's quite hard to do that. So what I started to do was I would just turn the hot down slowly and gradually get it cold, and then I would turn it freezing cold, and that's an easier way to kind of progress into a cold shower. So that's my daily habits.
Do you believe the morning routine that you have right now has allowed you to become as successful as you are?
Absolutely. I think that your habits really shape your success. And I think it comes down to discipline as well. Like, I find that most people don't have good habits because they just don't have the discipline to follow through. And what I've found is, to start a new habit, you need to take small steps. So when I started to try and do, say, the trampoline as an example, to stand on there for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, I actually found that really hard. So what I did, which is a little hack that anybody that's listening can use, is that I just started doing it for like 1 minute. So every day I committed to doing 1 minute of trampoline, because I thought anyone can do 1 minute. Like, that's easy. And then gradually I would build from 1 minute to 5 minutes to 10 minutes. And that's how you develop a habit over time. And I had the same challenge with meditation. So I found it really hard to meditate because I was really in my head. And so I just started doing, again, 1 minute of meditation. And I would just commit to doing that every single day. And then after a couple of weeks, I would make it 2 minutes. And gradually I was able to build it up over time and get the momentum. So I think it's really important to my success and to anyone's success, really, is the habits that you live every day.
I know I've seen Tony Robbins and other people use the trampoline you're talking about, and I know for myself that's something I want to look into getting. Do you know where a place where you can find it for our audience? Yeah,
absolutely. They're just on Amazon.com. So if you type in Bellicon, there's a few different sizes. I recommend not the smallest one. I actually like the mid-size one. And there's one where the legs actually fold down, but I actually personally prefer the ones where the legs stay on. And the reason why, and this is another little hack, is that when you fold the legs down and put it under your bed, that trampoline is not in your face every single day. So the chance of you lifting it out from underneath the bed and setting it up every day to jump on it, there's effort required to do that. So I find that if it's permanently set up and I walk through the door and it's there, I'm going to use it. So for anyone that's listening, Amazon.com if you want to get your hands on one. And I recommend the black and orange one.
if you look at writers, such as like Stephen King and the other prolific writers out there in the world, they usually have a word count for how much words they want to write per day. Do you use a word count, or do you go about how many blog posts you want to write per day?
Yeah, I've sort of experimented with this idea a little bit. On entrepreneur.com, I'm only allowed 1,200 words per blog post. And whilst initially I found that quite challenging because I like to write longer blog posts, I've actually found it really good because it makes my articles very succinct, and I have to get to the point and not waffle on with a whole bunch of stories. So, on Entrepreneur, it's 1,200, but on Addicted to Success, I am very lucky to be an administrator, so I can actually write as much as I want. Typically on there, my articles are probably 2,000 words or more. I don't believe in trying to aim for any number of words. I think it needs to just flow out of you and just be as long as it needs to be. So, yeah, I'm not big on the number of words. But another sort of hack that I learned was that every day you should just try and write something. So sometimes I sit down, I feel very uninspired, but I find that if you just get started and you just write anything, like it might even be just about something that happened during the week, eventually it starts to flow out of you. And it's more about the habit of just writing as opposed to saying, I'm not feeling inspired, so I'm not going to write today. And it's very easy to get stuck in that mindset. So just get out there and just write something. And maybe the first thing you write for the day will be horrible, but then jump straight into the next blog post and maybe that will be really good. And a great example of this was yesterday, funny enough. I'd written 2 blog posts in the morning. I was feeling pretty exhausted. And it came to the afternoon, I was feeling very uninspired. And I don't know why, I saw a headline of a blog post and I thought, wow, that would be interesting for me to write about. And so I wrote an article called Unemployed at 25. And I honestly feel it's like one of the best things that I've ever written. And in that particular state, I was very uninspired. And then all of a sudden, I started to go into this state of flow and it just poured out of me. And it was basically a rehash of an article I wrote about 2 years ago called 14 Ways I Completely Changed My Life and So Can You. And it was essentially that article again, but with a different lens and a different set of tools to the first article. And yeah, I just found that sometimes you just got to sit down, no matter how inspired you may or may not feel, and just get into it and stop worrying about the number of posts you've done or how many words, and just let it pour out of you. So that would be my advice for the audience.
Tim, you've written hundreds of blog posts, and I wanted to ask you, what have you learned from writing all those blog posts?
I've learned a number of things. I find the best blog posts are the ones where I'm vulnerable. So, for example, a lot of the blog posts that I share, I actually share them on LinkedIn. And so on LinkedIn, there are a lot of people that I work with who, could potentially judge me or think that I'm a bit silly or crazy or whatever. But I found that the number one tip is to just be vulnerable. And when you're thinking of holding back and not sharing the full story because there's something that might embarrass you, my advice is just to do it and don't worry about people's opinions. So if I think back to all my blog posts, I've written about almost being murdered. Yeah, and that's a true story and what that was like and the feelings that came with that particular incident. I've written about anxiety that I battled with for many years. I've written about breakups and failed relationships. I've written about businesses that have failed in a big, big way. And I've even written about things like fasting. Last year I did a 38-day fast and I wrote all about what it was like to do that particular fast. And what I found is when you write blog posts, a lot of the time you might only be getting 2 or 3 likes, especially in the beginning, but you think no one's actually reading them, and they are. Just a lot of the time people are too scared to actually like your post or share it. They might be reading it, but they don't actually tell you that they are. And so that's one of the things that I've learned. The other thing would be around using stories. So I find, rather than just rehash other people's content or try and keep it all sort of into specific tips, you should actually share stories, and ideally stories that that you're a part of or that you've heard from other people, because stories really make it personal, and that's how people can learn. And so I've used a lot of stories. And I also find that writing cures a lot of the things that you might be struggling with in your life. So if I'm going through a really hard time, a lot of the articles I'm writing, I'm actually not even sometimes even writing them for the audience. I'm writing them, they're almost like letters to myself to cure myself from my own, demons or depressions or whatever it might be. And the last tip I would share with you is around the transfer of emotion. So everything that we do in life, we're just trying to transfer emotion to other people. That's essentially what we're trying to achieve. And, for a long time I was involved in the music industry and I was a DJ. And I tried to nut out what I was trying to do with my music, and I figured out that I was just trying to make people feel something. I was trying to transfer emotion to them. And whilst now I'm not in music and I'm not a DJ, with my writing I'm trying to do the same thing. I'm trying to transfer emotion to you, to inspire you to do something that you didn't think you were capable of doing. And so I really think that, that transfer of emotion is absolutely critical for whatever your art or your gift or your craft is that you're trying to, bring to the world.
Do you think it's that between that storytelling and literally telling the stories that you've gone through yourself and just making it relatable to the other people in the world that make your blog post so powerful?
Yeah, I think the relatable part is very important, because what I learn is that everybody is just as scared and as fearful and as, vulnerable as what I am. When Barack Obama goes to give a speech, or Donald Trump or whoever, they're all just as scared as you and I. The thing is that they push through that fear and being scared, and they just get on with it. And so that's what I've tried to do, is I've just tried to understand that everyone has the same flaws as me. The only difference is I'm happy to share my flaws, and I'm not going to hide from them. And I just think that's really, really important.
Let's say someone in our audience is listening to this and they're pretty young in blogging and they're trying to get ideas. Do you have any suggestions as to where they can find ideas or come up with ideas on their own to write about?
Yeah, I mean, what I sort of did is my original sort of niche was success. So I wrote down the success on a page, and then I wrote all the things that are related to success. So I might write habits or mindset or something along those lines. And then once I get to mindset, then I would write another kind of line that would come off the back of that, like negative emotions or positive emotions. And so it's really about just mapping out all the different things that you could write about that are in your niche. And also reading other people's blogs. Like that's how I came across Become the Lion, because I was looking for inspiration, and I started looking at your blog and other people's blogs, and I would often see maybe a topic and I thought, I could write about that. So I think, that, and as well as what happens in your own life, like pretty much everything I've written is just come from my own experience. So things that I see on a day-to-day basis. And one of the most popular articles I ever wrote was a lady that actually works in the same company as me abused me one day really badly. Like, she basically said that I was a horrible person, I'd done the wrong thing, and I was really quite taken back. And so I wrote an article all about how to overcome negative people. And that was one of the most successful things I ever wrote. And it just came from something that happened to me day to day that was just a normal experience. But people relate to that. They don't want to hear about things that are, that they can never achieve or that are just so far out of reach. They want to hear about things that they can do and that they can be inspired by. That would be my advice.
When you get an idea for a blog post, let's say you have 5 ideas for a blog post, and then you start working on the ideas. Do you ever, get a couple hundred words in and realize that maybe this blog post isn't for you, or do you just try to go through it?
Yeah, no, I definitely do have that. I've got many unwritten blog posts where I just start, and then for whatever reason, I just find I don't have a lot to say on the topic. And that can happen. And again, it's just about stopping and then going, all right, what else can I write about? And not being afraid to just trash what you've done or throw it away. Not feeling like you have to complete everything, because you don't. I would probably say about 10% of my blog posts never get finished, and the other 90% I'm able to complete. And that's part of what happened to me yesterday, was that I found that I was writing a blog post and it wasn't resonating with me. I couldn't come up with any ideas. And so I just stopped writing it, went away, came back, and that's when the really good blog posts sort of came out of me. So, I think it's just a matter of seeing what feels right for you. And if it doesn't feel right, stop and just be okay with that.
Have you ever faced any form of writer's block in your blog posting career?
Yes, I face writer's block all the time, and I've got some really good advice for everybody who may be facing the same thing. And it may not just be writer's block. You might be a musician and have musician's block, whatever it might be. So what I do I try and write on the weekend. I find that's when I'm in the best headspace. And so what I do to overcome writer's block, and not just writer's block, but to be inspired, because I need to be in a high peak energy state to be able to write inspirational content. If I'm down and depressed, it's quite hard to write something that's inspiring. So what I do is I have a list of YouTube videos that I have saved on my computer, and I'll usually start with 2 or 3 of those videos. And like it's quite corny what a lot of them are. Like some of them are just auditions for like talent shows or a lot of those motivational videos that you see where it's like a whole bunch of Hollywood movies mashed up with someone talking over the top. And I'll just find the ones that resonate with me and I'll watch those to help me get inspired. Then I will, try and take some sort of inspiration from my week. So if I have the writer's block and I can't come up with anything, I will just write down a list of things that happened to me in the previous week and I'll try and write about one of those. The other way that I get over writer's block is I actually find that if I have like a green tea or a hot tea, that really helps me sort of get in the zone and overcome the fact that I may not have any ideas for that particular day. And sometimes, the best, articles just come out of those moments. The other way I overcome writer's block is trying to create energy again. So back to getting into that peak state, I will also jump on the trampoline and try and clear my head and build the energy up again. And then if I do all of that and I can't come up with anything to write, then I'll just leave it for the day. I'll sleep on it and I'll wake up the next day. And I use that as the same hack where if I'm facing a really difficult time or a difficult decision, rather than get upset because I don't have the answer, I'll just go to bed, I'll sleep on it, and I know that when I wake up the next day, I'll be refreshed and I'll have a new mindset and a new way of thinking, and then I will be able to come up with that particular blog post that I'm trying to write. So that's how I overcome writer's block.
Tim, I wanted to ask you, what do you think stops people from becoming successful in their life?
Yeah, there's a number of things. I feel like procrastination. I think that a lot of people talk a big game and they talk about what they're going to do, but they just never take action or they don't take enough action. And I think if you have a dream and you want to do something, just actually get out there and do it and stop talking about it and telling everybody what you're going to do and just put your head down and do it. And don't feel like you have to go on social media every 5 seconds to update everybody on what you're doing. Just get the work done. I think obviously, as we've talked about already, I think fear also stops us from being successful as well. We're worried about what other people think or that we may not achieve our goals. But what we've got to understand is that every failure that we have in our life is helping to contribute to our success. And if we never have any failure, we're never going to have any success. So, I just think don't let that fear hold you back. Just embrace it, understand that it means you're on the right path, and just have a go. I also think the other thing that holds us back is, again, social media. We're all obsessed with going on Instagram and looking at everybody else's life and thinking how wonderful their life is and how, insignificant we are. And that really sort of messes with our self-worth. And we just sit on social media scrolling all day, just looking at that, and it can be quite depressing. So I think that really stops us from being successful. The other thing I think that stops us is our hustle. So there's a guy I interviewed here in Australia called Andrew Morello. And Andrew Morello became famous when he won a TV show called The Apprentice. And the reason why he won the show was not because he was the smartest guy, but he had the most amount of hustle. He told the story of when he had his real estate business with his brother and they were going through the global financial crisis and their business was nearly shut down completely. He just got out there and he started door knocking on people's houses, and in a day he would see 300 houses and he would just knock on their door and ask them if they were prepared to sell their house. So he didn't, just sit there and be worried about what could happen. He just used his hustle and his work ethic, and that's why he won The Apprentice, because he just had more work ethic than anybody else. He was happy to go out there and do the hard yards and stop talking a big game. And the final thing I think that stops us from being successful is just having the guts and the courage. So there's a guy that I know, and he was unfortunate enough to go bankrupt. And rather than let that hold him back, he came up with an idea for a technology business, and he rang up some people in Silicon Valley, and he was able to raise off one phone call $100,000 to start his next business. And he just had the guts and the courage to just go out there and make it happen. And if I told most of the people listening that, you could ring up somebody on the phone and get $100,000 from them from never actually meeting them and just having a 10-minute conversation, you would all think I was crazy. But it's that guts and that determination that's going to make you successful. So, yeah, that would be my advice.
When you look at it from the big picture, it's almost like essentially you're saying, don't make any excuses in your life, and then just don't let procrastination or anything like that hold you back. I feel like sometimes people almost self-sabotage themselves a little bit. Do you think that's the case in some people?
Yeah, I think we self-sabotage ourselves all the time, and we're just, I don't know, I'm not sure what it is. We just let our thoughts and our mind just drive us in the wrong direction. I mean, what we've got to understand is that our mind is, 90% negative thoughts. That's how we're programmed. So if you just do nothing and you procrastinate, those negative thoughts are going to take over. Our human brains are not designed to be positive. We have to force that on ourselves. We're designed to survive. We're not designed to break through our fears. Fears is supposed to guide us. And I think, I just think that's why we self-sabotage ourselves.
Tim, let's say you're getting ready to write a blog post. Like you mentioned, you have social media, you have procrastination, you have all these distractions coming your way. How do you block out all those distractions when you go to sit down and write your blog posts?
Yeah, so I do a few things, and I'm not the best at this, to be brutally honest. The first thing I do is I put my iPhone on flight mode, because I know that if I get a phone call or an SMS, especially if it's a loved one, that's going to distract me from my writing. So that's the very first thing that I do. The challenge I have is that when I write, I like to have the internet to be able to research certain things. And often I'll find myself clicking Facebook or LinkedIn, to get that hit of dopamine, to see, someone's just shared my article or whatever it might be. And I still to this day find that really hard. I don't know how you overcome that. I think you just have to get focused and just have to be really disciplined and not be, just not be distracted. If you can, my advice would be just to turn the internet off altogether and just literally write and let it come from the heart, and don't allow the internet to distract you, because technology in some ways has brought us closer, but it's also sort of ripped us apart at the same time, because we've just become these distracted mammals that can't get off our phones, that can't resist, seeing what someone's saying about us in the moment, and it's really hard to break free from. So I think, putting your phone on flight mode and turning your internet off is the best way to avoid distractions.
Tim, let's say someone in our audience is listening to this and they're just starting their business. They could have gone through high school or college, not gotten the best grades, and they almost don't believe in themselves. But, as we both know, you have to really believe in yourself if you want to be successful. What advice would you give to that person on how to believe in themselves?
Yeah, I mean, how I believe in myself is that I find you just have to have blind faith. So even when there's no reason and it makes no sense that you're even going to be successful, you just have to have that blind faith that things are going to work out, and that even the failures that you might have, there's actually a meaning behind them, and they're actually just as important as the successes. So the blind faith is key. And I think, again, like I said before, fear is telling you that you're on the right path. So, for example, when I go and I'm doing Toastmasters at the moment to improve my public speaking. And before some of the speeches, I get quite fearful. But I know that fear means that I'm doing the right thing, that I'm out of my comfort zone and I'm trying to better myself. And so I think you need to use your fear again to sort of motivate you. And so if you use those things, I really think that you can believe in yourself, but it's up to you. It's a decision that you're going to do it, and you're not relying on external forces to motivate you and to give you that inspiration to actually believe in yourself. So that would be, I think, the best way to tackle it.
On your journey as a writer and as an entrepreneur, have there been any breakthroughs or personal breakthroughs that you've had to go through in your life?
Yeah, I've had many. Probably my most notable one that I write about, the most is, in 2011 when I exited a failed business that went really bad, and I had to, I basically had nothing at that point, and I had to find a way to break through, and I didn't really have any of the answers. I had, a lacking mindset. I didn't feel like I was good enough, and I suppose what helped me get through that personal breakthrough, and what the audience can do, is make a decision that you've had enough, that you're not going to live in that space anymore, that you're going to be better and become more than you've ever been. And it starts with a decision. That's the first way to have a personal breakthrough. The other part I find when you're at rock bottom is that you have to be grateful for what you do have. You can't focus on what you don't have. You have to be grateful for what you do have. And one little hack that I use in those sort of moments is that I go to a homeless shelter. So I'll go in Melbourne here, there's a homeless shelter called St. Mary's. It's run by some really lovely nuns. And I'll go to the homeless shelter and I'll serve some meals for the day. And I'll find that even though I'm having such a difficult time in my life, nothing is more difficult than the homeless people who have even less than I do. So it puts my challenges in perspective. And so I think that's pretty crucial to a personal breakthrough. I think the other part to your personal breakthrough is to really look at your network of friends and, you know, are there some toxic people? Are there some people that are bringing you down that you need to exit out of your life? And that's a tough decision, but you're not going to break through unless you change the people that you're surrounded by. And I also think you need to change not just the people you're surrounded by, but the content and the media that you're consuming. So one thing I did in my personal breakthrough is I made a commitment not to listen to the news anymore, because I don't want to hear about all the things that are wrong in the world. I want to hear about all the things that have gone, you know, amazing in the world. And so I actually use a media platform that everyone can Google called the Good News Network, which is essentially all the same headlines that the traditional news channels have, but it's the positive perspective on them. It's the things that are going right that can inspire you. So I think these are the sorts of things that you need to do to have a personal breakthrough. And for me, the biggest part was I made the decision in 2011, and that's when I got involved in personal development. And the way that sort of happened was I came across Tony Robbins, who's been sort of a big inspiration in my life. And I started listening to his audio tapes, and late at night you could see me, you know, walking around the neighborhood at midnight, listening to his audio tapes, and even, you know, chanting and doing incantations and say yes, you know, at the top of my lungs. And that was sort of the trigger. And then in 2013, I went to one of Tony's events in Sydney. And that was a big thing in itself, because I had to overcome my fear of flying to actually get to the event. And when I got there, that was where I had the real breakthrough, where I figured out all the things that I wasn't going to settle for anymore. So I think sometimes some external help, like an event or some sort of inspiration like that, can be the other sort of key trigger to help you have that personal breakthrough.
I noticed how you mentioned, you know, how you listen to Tony Robbins. Do you have any tapes or, you know, products that you use from him that you could recommend for our audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So Personal Power was the first audio tape I ever listened from him. His most popular seminar, and the one that you should start with, is called Unleash the Power Within. They happen all over the world. The tickets are about $1,000 Australian, roughly. So, you know, for some people that is a lot of money, and I get that, but that's where the real breakthroughs are going to happen. What's his other product? There's another one called Unlimited Power, and I really like that. And there's also a book as well that goes with that called Unlimited Power as well, that Tony Robbins wrote many, many years ago. So they would be the products that I would definitely recommend.
Tim, I want to go back a little bit, and I noticed where you talked about how you go to a homeless shelter, and do you think it's that sense of arises a sense of gratitude in your life?
Yeah, it does. I mean, you know, when I was at the homeless shelter, I met this man who used to run. I live in Melbourne, Australia, and this man used to run all of the trains in Melbourne, and now he's a homeless man because he lost his job. And, you know, just the opportunity to be able to sit down with someone like that and say, look, you've achieved more success than I have. I mean, I don't run all the trains in Melbourne. Like, that's an amazing achievement. And now you're homeless. Like, what has made you think like that? And the fact that I can offer just some little advice and a few little tips for that person that may make him go from being homeless to back running the trains in Melbourne or doing something just as great, to me that is really, quite an achievement. And I just find that you feel really grateful because you see people that just have absolutely nothing. Like, they don't even have, you know, a bag or $5 or anything. And here's me sooking, and I don't have that problem. Like, okay, even if I don't have a job, I've still got some nice suits and I own a car and I've got somewhere to live. And it just puts things in perspective. And I think everybody needs that dose of gratitude. And, you know, it's not a big secret. If you've done any personal development, you'll know that gratitude is a key part to all success. And basically any self-help book that you can read, chances are the first chapter or one of the early chapters is going to be on gratitude. So if you haven't come across it before, or you don't, you know, you haven't experienced it, my advice to everybody is to go out there and experience gratitude. And, you know, the other way I do it is just in nature. I like to travel a lot. And when you go out in nature, you can just be grateful for the simple things, right? Like, I was in New Zealand about a year ago, and I was walking through, I forgot the name of it now, but basically what had happened is the 2 weeks prior to me going to New Zealand, a rock had fallen off the top of this mountain, And what had occurred is that when that rock moved away, it created a waterfall. And apparently there had been no waterfall in this area for millions of years. And 2 weeks before I came to that particular spot, out of nowhere, a waterfall had appeared. And I just thought, like, how awesome is that, right? Just to be grateful for something so simple as a giant rock moving out of the way and a waterfall being created, and me being able to draw inspiration from that. So, yeah, gratitude can come from anywhere. I really believe that.
And Tim, I wanted to say, this interview has been excellent so far, and now we're going to enter the Lions round, where I'm just going to ask you a couple of quick questions before we end the show today.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds great.
What would you say to someone who's just starting out and going after their dream?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, get started today. So whatever you want to do, just take the first step today. Doesn't matter what it is. It might be a phone call, might be your first blog post. It might even be the first sentence of your blog post. Just get started today would be tip number one. Second would be rig the game so you can win. And what I mean by that is, like I said before, take small steps. Stop trying to, change the world in one day. It's not going to happen. Take a couple of small steps, rig the game so that you can win. And the question I like to use, which I learned off Tim Ferriss, was, what would this look like if it was easy? If I was trying to write an article and it was really easy, what would that look like? And whatever your definition of that is, do that. And the other thing I would say is your plans are going to change every week. So forget about strategy. You're constantly going to live in a state of change. And so just deal with that concept and embrace that particular idea.
Do you happen to have 2 or 3 books that you'd recommend for our audience to read?
Yes, I do. So I've just finished reading Tools of Titans by Tim Ferriss. And I love that book. It's really about all the lessons that he's learned from the over 200 interviews that he's done. For the Tony Robbins fans, there's quite a big section on Tony Robbins. The really good one that I got from there was the Arnold Schwarzenegger chapter. I've watched all his movies, but I didn't understand how inspiring and motivational Arnold Schwarzenegger could be. So that's definitely a book that I think everyone should get. The other book I really like is The Alchemist, which is essentially a fictional story that is written that's kind of the crux of what success is all about and personal development. So if you haven't read that, get out and look at that. And the last book I would recommend that I mentioned before is Tony Robbins' Unlimited Power. And that is another great book. My favorite line from that book is sell your car and buy a juicer, which is a classic line from that book. So that would be my 3 books to recommend.
And Tim, last question of the day. Where can our audience find you?
Yeah, probably the easiest place is on my website. So my website is timdenning, which is DENNING.net. And basically all my social media channels, links to all my articles on Addicted to Success and on entrepreneur.com are available on that website. And if you want to reach out to me, send me an email, whatever you like, you can reach me on that website.
And Tim, I'd just like to say thank you so much for taking the time today to speak with our audience.
No problem, Trevor. Thanks for having me on the show, and keep doing what you guys are doing. I really love the work that you're doing on Become the Lion.
Thanks for listening to Become the Lion. Everything from today's show will be in our show notes on our website. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes. Till next week, don't stop grinding.